Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight. President Donald Trump hits the tracks at the Daytona 500. He praises the unyielding American spirit and takes reporters' questions on the tarmac after leaving the event. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that terrorist group Hamas must be wiped out and fully endorsed Israel's ambitions in the Gaza Strip. And the State Department has removed the line saying the U.S. does not support Taiwan's independence, what it means for the U.S.-Taiwan relations, and the U.S. stance toward the Indo-Pacific. Multiple states are struggling under flooding, wind, and cold, but hope of relief is not necessarily near. Find out what to expect this week. One New York City bodega owner is using a creative way to make eggs more affordable. It says a dozen eggs for $10 to $12 has become too high for local residents.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump took a spin around the track earlier today at the Daytona 500 in Florida. Trump arrived in Daytona Beach along with his son Eric Trump, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. He then led the race car drivers around the track in his limousine for 2 ceremonial laps. In an earlier message to the Daytona 500, Trump said, quote, "From the roar of the engines on the track to the echo of the Star-Spangled Banner soaring through the stands, the Daytona 500 is a timeless tribute to the speed, strength, and unyielding spirit that make America great." This was the second time Trump attended the Daytona 500. The first was back in 2020 when the president was running for re-election. Trump left the race earlier than scheduled as rain forced the race to a halt. He then returned to West Palm Beach, Florida, where he spoke to reporters on the tarmac about the Middle East and the Russia-Ukraine war.
I think he wants to stop fighting. I see that. We spoke long and hard. Steve Witkoff was with him for a very extended period, like about 3 hours. I think he wants to stop fighting. They have a big, powerful machine. You understand that. And they defeated Hitler and they defeated Napoleon. You know, they've been fighting a long time. They've done it before. And but I think he would like to stop fighting. We're trying to get a peace with Russia, Ukraine, and we're working very hard on it. It's a war that should have never started.
Do you expect Zelensky to be involved in these conversations? What will his role be?
I do. He will be involved, yes. Told Bibi, you do whatever you want because, you know, my statement was they got to come back. Now, the reason I made that statement because they said they weren't going to deliver, they were not going to deliver the people that they said they were going to deliver, that they agreed to deliver. And they did agree to do that, but they broke that agreement. When I made the statement, they delivered everybody plus an American. Now, the good news is they look like they're in pretty good shape because the people from the week before didn't look like they were in good shape. They looked like Holocaust survivors, frankly. Horrible. Whatever happened to them was horrible. But that'll be up to Israel what the next step is, in consultation with me.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio endorsed Israel's aims in the Gaza Strip, saying Hamas must be eradicated. This as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed on Sunday to finish the job against Iran. Here's more.
The Trump administration issued a stark warning to Hamas leaders that the terrorist group must be wiped out. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued the warning Sunday in Jerusalem as he met with the Israeli Prime Minister in his first visit to the Middle East.
Hamas cannot continue as a military or government force. And frankly, as long as it stands as a force that can govern or as a force that can administer or as a force that can threaten by use of violence, peace becomes impossible. They must be eliminated. They must be eradicated.
Rubio went on to say that Iran is the single greatest source of instability in the region, that it is behind every terrorist group, act of violence, destabilizing activity, and everything that threatens peace and stability for millions of people. Rubio says the people of Iran are victims of the regime. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to, quote, finish the job against Iran with U.S. support.
Over the last 16 months, Israel has dealt a mighty blow to Iran's terror axis. Under the strong leadership of President Trump and with your unflinching support, I have no doubt that we can and will finish the job.
The comments from the two officials come after a proposal by President Donald Trump to relocate Palestinians in Gaza. Netanyahu said Sunday he knew about the plan before the U.S. president announced it. The meeting between Rubio and Netanyahu comes as negotiations continue over the release of the remaining hostages amid a ceasefire. Don Ma, NTD News.
Joining us now with more on Rubio's visit to Israel and the latest on the Middle East is David Wormser, analyst for Middle East and Affairs with the Center for Security Policy. David, good evening.
Good evening.
We just heard that report there, Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling Iran the single biggest threat in the region. I want to get your take on Rubio's statements today.
Well, I think he's aligned completely with the way the Israelis look at it, that even though Iran has been dealt a very significant blow by Israel by essentially eradicating most of its proxies as effective fighting forces and also exposing Iran as vulnerable to Israeli air power and then taking out the remainder of the air systems, it is very clear that Iran is damaged, but Iran is still there. They're galloping toward a nuclear weapon, and they have every intention to come back and pose as much of a threat as they did before. So the United States and Israel seem to be coming to a meeting of minds that something has to be done to stop them, perhaps a few months or a few weeks or so of diplomacy to give it a chance as long as Iran doesn't cross certain thresholds. But the expectation is that Iran won't give in, and eventually the Israelis will most likely have to do it. That, to be clear, the Israelis, I don't believe the United States intends to actually do any strikes. I think it's mostly the Israelis. But the United States would be the enabler, and they would give it a green light, and they would support it.
We also just heard Trump earlier in the show saying that he was essentially leaving the next step in the Middle East up to Israel in consultation with him. What actions can we expect from the U.S. next?
Well, the United States is the one that wants to, well, both sides, Israel and the United States, want all the hostages released. I mean, they're Israeli hostages and there's a few Americans among them. So we both want hostages released. The problem is the United States essentially has one or two hostages alive still. The Israelis still have potentially as many as 40 or 50. So they've both decided to cooperate and align their policies to demand that they all come out in the next week or two, essentially. But the Israelis are willing to go another week or so, getting 2 or 3 out, as many as they can get out before they have to go back to war. And I think that's what's really on the table here, is everybody knows, the Israelis and the United States, and are in agreement that Hamas has to be removed, and there's no way to do it ultimately without the Israelis returning back to the battlefield and finishing the job against Hamas. The Israelis, President Trump indicated that could happen over the weekend with his deadline. The Israelis, again, have to prepare, get ready. It'll take a week or two. And I guess they took the line that if we're anyway taking a week or two to get ready, if 2 or 3 more hostages come out before that alive, that's great, because once they go back to war, all the remaining hostages potentially could be killed. So they definitely would like to play it along as far as they can until they have to go back to war. But we're very close. It's not something that will be around in another 3 months. I think the Israelis are within days or weeks of resuming combat.
Certainly palpable tension in the situation you describe. The ceasefire is still very fragile. Thankfully, those 3 hostages were still released yesterday. I think many are kind of holding their breath and waiting to see if a deal will hold. Where do you see the ceasefire as it stands now?
Well, there's 3 stages to this deal, and the first stage, we're still in the first stage, where there's the Israelis withdrew from almost all the territory, but a few critical strategic territories they remained, and Hamas is supposed to release 33 hostages. The Israelis are trying to, because in the next phase, it's more permanent. Israel has to remove itself from all the remaining Gaza Strip, and that opens the border up between Egypt and Israel and the danger of smuggling, and Hamas could rehabilitate itself militarily. So the Israelis don't want to do that until they know Hamas is gone. And it's really impossible to see a path that would allow Hamas genuinely to leave. They don't want to leave. They may play games and say we're part of a coalition government in Gaza, whatever, but Hamas has no intention of genuinely giving up power. So I'm not sure how you really get to phase two, because that's what they're committed to in phase two, in exchange for which the Israelis get the remainder of the hostages. So I think phase one's it, and then you see it break down. So the Israelis are trying to add a week or two or three to phase one to see if they can get another 3, another 6, another 9 hostages back. Again, as long as they can string it along to get more hostages, they've already paid the price of withdrawing from 90%. So they might as well try to get a few more back. But we're talking about weeks, a few weeks, not more.
Just to broaden it out a little bit, to look at the involvement, the international involvement in the situation, Rubio is a well-known China hawk. He visited South America and now the Middle East, both areas where the Chinese regime has been building up its presence. And it's well known that they support Iran. Is he using these visits to send a message to the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, yes, I think this is an excellent question. You had the president, too, talk about this Middle East transportation corridor that goes from the UAE across the Arabian Peninsula to Israel, using Israeli ports, Indian, Greece, Israel as this corridor that also hooks up with Japan. This is really a response to China. What you're really seeing is the United States establishing the principle that slowly America will reassert its predominance in the region and China's influence will decline. Now, to do that, we don't want to send a bunch of troops. So we need strong allies. So that gets to the other pillar of our policy, which is we need strong allies who will carry the water. And in this case, Israel is both loyal and the most strong power in the region. So we're fortunate to have really the strongest regional power be our closest ally. So this is how it all comes together. And Rubio is there really to start fleshing that out.
David Wormser, analyst for Middle East Affairs with the Center for Security Policy. Always great to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Middle East envoy for the Trump administration is heading to Saudi Arabia today for peace talks with Russia. That's as the U.S. says Europe might not be involved in the negotiations for a truce. Here's the latest on Ukraine.
White House Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff saying he'll travel to Saudi Arabia late Sunday. He'll be joined by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz for talks on how to end the fighting in Ukraine. The talks will be among the first high-level in-person discussions between Russian and U.S. officials in years. They're meant to precede a meeting between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. That's as Ukraine envoy Keith Kellogg says he can't guarantee Europe will be part of the peace talks.
I think that's not going to happen. But I said that's one of the reasons I'm here talking to people. One of the reasons we're going out, we're doing it, to making sure that their positions are well known, that when we go into these positions, they're well stated.
Kellogg was also pressed about the timeline for Trump's peace plan. The president campaigned on ending the fighting on his first day in office. Kellogg points to the fact that Trump entered office less than a month ago.
What's the time frame? We're 25 days. I mean, maybe if you give us within 30 days, we might.
Well, he's already called Putin.
Yeah,
he's called Putin. So.
Well, that's pretty good considering that Biden didn't call Putin for 3 years.
Also on Sunday, the Kremlin commented on the talks in Saudi Arabia and a possible meeting between Trump and Putin.
A meeting between the two presidents requires, of course, special efforts in terms of its preparation, drawing up an agenda, preliminary discussion, exchange of views at the working level, and so on.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he trusts Trump, but adds that he wants a real meeting with him and to see action follow talks.
I trust President Trump because he's the president of the United States, because your people voted for him, and I respect their choice, and I will work with the President Trump with trust, which I have to the United States. But of course, I want to have real meeting, productive, without just words, with a concrete steps.
He added that any peace plan should be discussed among allies.
The Trump administration doubling down on efforts to fire the head of an agency, asking the Supreme Court to approve the dismissal. The administration fired the head of the U.S. Office of Special Counsel Hampton Dellinger on February 7th. The office investigates government-related ethics cases. Dellinger was appointed by former President Joe Biden. Upon the firing, Dellinger did not leave quietly. He sued the administration and won, arguing he can only be fired for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance, according to federal law. A federal judge agreed and unfired Dellinger. The administration is now appealing to the Supreme Court. It argues this is an unprecedented assault on the separation of powers. New updates on personal cuts inside the federal government. We're learning more about the number of fired employees in different departments. NTD's Fiona G. reports.
Currently, 1,165 workers have been fired from the National Health Institute, or NIH. This is down from an earlier number of 1,500. These numbers come from an NIH internal email seen by Reuters on Sunday. The workers affected will be put on administrative leave for 4 weeks before being officially terminated. Over at the National Nuclear Security Administration, or NNSA, less than 50 workers were dismissed. According to a spokesperson for the Department of Energy, the workers were probationary employees who held primarily administrative and clerical roles. The NNSA is under the Department of Energy and maintains America's nuclear weapons arsenal. These cuts are just part of sweeping changes enacted by President Donald Trump and Doge head Elon Musk. Here are some more of the latest numbers. The Department of Homeland Security reports it has cut 405 workers. More than 1,000 workers have been fired from the Department of Veteran Affairs. At least 45 probationary employees have been fired from the Small Business Administration. At the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, as many as 70 probationary employees have been fired, and notices of termination were also sent to dozens of workers with fixed-term contracts. At the Department of Education, at least 160 recent hires have been notified of their termination. Other departments hit by the layoffs include the General Services Administration, Office of Personnel Management, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Agriculture, and the Department of the Interior. Overall, the dismissals have affected around 9,500 federal government employees. The firings are in addition to around 75,000 federal workers who, according to the White House, have accepted a buyout offer from the president. It remains unclear exactly how many workers will be fired. Agencies are due to report their official numbers on Tuesday. Critics of the layoffs say firing so many workers will hinder the government's ability to provide basic and necessary aid and services. Proponents say cutting non-essential workers eliminates waste and unnecessary bureaucracy. Fiona G., NTD News.
Severe weather stretching across multiple states has caused a growing number of deaths. 8 of those occurred in Kentucky, where the governor is warning people to stay off the roads.
This emergency phase we're in is going to last at least a couple more days. That's the type of event we're dealing with, and we're going to be actively dealing with this flood for probably the next week in different parts of at least getting things cleaned up.
Governor Andy Beshear says most of the deaths were caused by cars getting stuck in floodwaters. He also said there have been 1,000 rescues across the state since the storm started on Saturday.
The biggest challenge of this event is it's everywhere. When the secretary called me last night and said, "Where are you most concerned about?" I said, this event is hitting all 120 counties. So where we had to pre-position assets was in every part of our state, and flooding is still possible around many, many rivers in our state, all across.
Another known death related to the storms occurred in Atlanta when a tree fell on a house. The northern plains region experienced life-threatening cold while snowstorms engulfed the Midwest and Northeast. North Carolina and the Southeast are also dealing with cold and snow. Air travel has slowed due to high winds and storms at Charlotte Douglas International Airport. In Louisiana, 2 deaths are believed to have occurred because of storms. The National Weather Service issued a tornado watch warning for 5 states in the Southeast for Sunday morning. It urged residents to be prepared and to have a safe location to go to. But more harsh weather is expected. The National Weather Service says snow and wind that stretches from the Great Lakes to New England will start to slow down by this evening, but a new surge of cold will spread over the next few days. With it will come more snow on the northern west coast and nearby regions. A new blast of cold is also expected in the south as a cold front drifts downward. It will reach as far south as Texas and is expected to linger throughout the week.
Coming up, the State Department has removed the line saying the U.S. does not support Taiwan's independence, what it means for U.S.-Taiwan relations, and the U.S. stance toward the Indo-Pacific. That and more after the break.
This past year has been one of the hardest in MyPillow's history. It's because of you that we're making it through. My employees and I want to thank you for your continued support by extending our wholesale prices on classic MyPillows. Get standard classic MyPillows only $14.98. I can't believe I'm even saying that. Only $14.98. But it gets even better. Upgrade to a queen size MyPillow for just $18.98. King size only $1 more. Get my body pillows $29.98 and multi-use MyPillows for only $9.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of these wholesale prices, including my standard size MyPillow, originally $49.98, now only $14.98. Queens $18.98, Kings only $1 more. Not only that, order $75 or more, ship absolutely free. From all of us here at MyPillow, thanks America!
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. A few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Turning to Washington's relationship with one strategic partner in the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan, the State Department has removed a statement on its website that it does not support Taiwan independence, among other changes. This comes after the top diplomats of the U.S., Japan, and South Korea announced their support of Taiwan's participation in certain international organizations. Taiwan is a self-governed island and has its own military and Congress, but Communist China sees the island as a breakaway territory, despite never having ruled it. Back to the State Department's website on Taiwan, except for cutting the line, "We do not support Taiwan independence" out, the department has also added a tech and semiconductor collab project between Taiwan and the Pentagon to the website. Also, the State Department said the U.S. will support Taiwan's membership in the international bodies, quote, "where applicable." The change comes after the 3 foreign secretaries met in Munich yesterday, where they reiterated their commitment to upholding peace and security in the Indo-Pacific. It's worth noting that the State Department under former President Biden also removed a reference to Taiwan's independence back in 2022, but added it back a month later following protests from Beijing. Egg prices are up in New York City, where locals often buy groceries from small corner stores. One bodega owner is giving his customers a break with an old practice that used to be done with cigarettes. NTD's Sean Marshall has more information.
With a little extra creativity, a Bronx bodega, Pamela's Deli, has been able to sell more eggs than usual. By selling just 3 eggs at a time for $2.99 in small bags to ease the cost for the customer.
Because you would figure sometimes people might not have the whole $12 for the dozen of eggs. They might have $3 or $4, and they might have to get other groceries as well.
The bodega has been getting a lot of extra publicity for coming up with the idea.
Yeah, I sell 3 eggs for $2.99, and most better for customer. Somebody customer I know have $12 for dozen of eggs. I sell 3 for $2.99. You know, it's better for dozen, for better for customer.
Loose eggs, as they are referred to, is similar to the old practice of selling loose cigarettes to people that couldn't afford to buy an entire pack.
Egg price is very expensive. The economy is really bad right now. People are struggling to feed their families. So, egg prices are here good. It's $3 for $1 in the Ziploc bag. You can't go wrong. It helps you out, helps the community out. It's a win-win situation.
Although selling eggs without labeling comes with a legal risk, but the owner says he's not worried and is more concerned with helping out the customers. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm Brendan Fallon. Good night.